What you're seeing right now is a music video that I shot last year that had a bunch of big, wide night exteriors. I just wanted to make this quick breakdown to show you how we got this look on a pretty tight budget using the Sony FX6. So there's this movie that came out last year called The Creator, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with by now. So on The Creator, they used the Sony FX3. For a lot of their night exteriors, they jumped up to the 12,800 second base ISO. And as a result, they were able to use much smaller, lighter fixtures to get the job done, like the Aperture 1200D. The biggest lights that we had were also 1200s, so I figured this would be like the perfect approach for this shoot. And just quick side note, the FX3 and FX6 have the same sensor and like internal capabilities, but we ended up going with the FX6 because it's bigger and easier to build out for Steadicam. We also used the Kowa, however you say it, 75mm anamorphic, which is what they used on that movie. So here is the setup. This is the wide shot. This is the first thing that we got on the day. So we had two Nanlite 1200Bs off to the right here. One of them is aimed at the spaceship, kind of backlighty, kind of behind it. And then the other one is aimed just like at the woods in the back, just to add some more depth. Since we had such high ISO, we were able to place the lights like really far away from the set, like at least 300 feet, I think. I'm having a hard time remembering, but they were pretty far. And the reason for that is because of how light falls off exponentially. It doesn't fall off linearly. So if I were to have the lights just outside of frame, these trees over here would be like way brighter than over here. And you can still see there is some fall off from right to left, but it's way less than it would have been if I had just placed the lights like right outside of the frame. And I think the result is something that's like much more natural feeling, and it doesn't feel so sourcey or like there's a light, feeling like there's a light right outside of frame. And the last thing we added to this wide, this is like another shot of that wide, we added a Gemini 1x1 panel just aimed right here at this foreground. That helped fill in that foreground just a little bit because it was looking just a little too dark at first. And then there's a Nanlite Pavo tube inside of the ship. We also had a couple Pavo tubes like where the fire was going, just to like light up the grass and the trees a little bit, and to give a reference for our visual effects team. And all that haze that you see is just a couple bug foggers with mineral oil in them. So here's another shot in a completely different area of the woods. We kept our lights exactly where they were. We just like rotated them to point to this area. Since that 12,800 ISO allowed our lights to reach so far, we were able to shoot in like a really big semicircle, always backlighting our talent. So we just kept pivoting those lights around. Depending on where we were in the woods, we would just pivot them to backlight and then keep shooting. And that allowed us to like get in a lot of different areas of the woods, have like a lot of variety, and stay with these characters for their long journey through the woods. And this is the same exact thing here. We just rotated one of the 1200s to hit our elephant character here, and then another one shooting at the trees in the back, which you can kind of see, again, to add some depth. So this shot was the only shot where we didn't use those 1200s for our moonlight source. And the reason for that was we wanted this lake to be in the background, and that wouldn't work with where the 1200s were positioned. So we added two 600Ds like way off in the back to the right, and we just aimed them at the lake there to highlight that fog. And also this orange key light, like fire key light you've been seeing, is a Gemini 1x1 on like a fire flicker setting. We were also able to put that like really far away, which gave the feeling that it was like a bigger source. And yeah, that is the entire breakdown. So I think the biggest lesson I learned here was that when doing big night exteriors like this, it's good to place the lights far away to make them feel a bit more realistic. And sometimes that requires using really high ISO, especially if you don't have access to big lights. I was talking to Jarrett Jarvis, who's my gaffer on this one, and he was saying that these 1200s effectively became M90s when we went from 800 to 12,800 ISO. I think it's something like a 5 times increase in brightness, which is really crazy. And since that high ISO gives our lights a much bigger throw, it really reduces the amount of relighting we have to do. Because again, we were able to just keep our lights for the most part in the same exact location as we just like went around them and shot around the lights. Of course, every scenario is gonna be different, but for our shoot, it worked really well. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this quick, simple breakdown. I hope this inspires some ideas for your next big night exterior shoot. See you guys.